do the preliminaries, starting with the praise to Buddha. Teacher Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct. Sugata, know of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. Teacher Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct. Sugata, know of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans. To you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, made offerings, and go for refuge. Teacher Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct. Sugata, know of the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans. To you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Yeah, so we'll offer the mandala, and perhaps you already know the tune in Tibetan, so maybe we'll try that today. Sashi Pugi Joshi Meto Dan Rirali Shi Ninde Gen Badi Sangye Shindu Me Devu Wa Yi Dogu Namda Shing La Jipa Shor Idang Guru Rana Mandala Gom Nuyatayami. Okay, and then taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly by my practice of giving and other perfections. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, all right. So nice to have you back again, and we'll continue from where we left off last week, with mainly focusing on setting a good motivation daily in terms of, this idea of seeking happiness from within, of searching for a place within ourselves that can be transformed into a path and ultimately for Buddhahood. So, of course, it is based on the teachings of the graduated path to enlightenment, the Lam Rim, as a literal translation is stages of the path. So, where we left off with the text was talking about the beings or the person who practices or is capable of practicing the lowest scope, the small scope. And so what we take away from that is mainly identifying that we have the precious human rebirth, and that we should value this as an incredible opportunity that rarely comes, very, very rarely comes. And then, recognizing that we will all sooner or later go on to the death phase. And then from there, we reincarnate again into future rebirths. And so by thinking that the happiness of that we generally pursue just for this life alone is not enough, to bring us lasting peace and happiness, then we at least try to give up just the thought of pursuing the happiness of this life alone, and think that it is worthwhile to check our actions and to strive, aspire towards the happiness of a future rebirth, like at least the next life, and then also the lives after that. So just also backtracking here a little bit, that we're talking here about the teachings of the Buddha, in particular, Shakyamuni Buddha. And when we talk about looking at this idea of making our lives less than ordinary, or as I kind of came up with this title of an extraordinary life, what to do to make our life really memorable, I guess, memorable in the sense that it's really meaningful, and it's I guess the word is still extraordinary, so we'll stick with that. And then I talked about how that when you look for a skill that you want to learn, or something that you want to have expertise in, then what you do is you look for someone who is an expert in that field to follow. Like if you're learning a trade, then you look for an expert craftsman to guide you and to teach you, and then you would want to follow their model exactly. And so in terms of talking about within this life, then we seek out a spiritual guide, an expert in the field of Dharma, Dharma teachings, Dharma learning, Dharma qualifications, and realizations. And then, we follow that guide, having checked that person is a qualified guide. And so that is the one that we call a Lama or a Guru. A Lama is a very loosely used term, and I discovered this when I was in Nepal, especially recently. I was there for a longer period of time in a different setting from our usual kind of FPMT Geluk environment, and this was more with the people from the Nyingma and from the Kagyu, and everyone is a Lama, in that community. Everyone who wears robes, and I guess is a male, I guess a female, maybe a Lama isn't really the usual word to use, or just anyone who looks like they're a Buddhist kind of practitioner, with those that have different sorts of robes, and even the hair, having the kind of like extremely long hair that's put up into a kind of a top knot, and then so everyone's kind of a Lama. So maybe it's a bit too loose a term to use, but anyway, here we're talking about the Guru. So as I said, to backtrack a little bit, and when we talk about the teachings of the Buddha, then the one who we owe all of the Dharma to is the Buddha himself, a very special being, who came to our world, in this age, over 2,500 years ago, right, in India, as we know about the story of Buddha, and how he displayed a succession, a series of like deeds in his life. He lived like about 83 years, right? So, it's not like nowadays, maybe, we look at people who live a lot longer, but anyway, during that period of time is when he turned the wheel of the Dharma. And so I would say that the key or the primary model that we would look to is Shakyamuni Buddha. And it's just really due to his kindness that we're sitting together here across the globe and having this conversation. And then just to imagine that those teachings have endured intact, complete, for over 2,500 years. I mean, maybe it's about 2,000, soon to be 2,600. A very long time that the Buddha's teachings have prevailed. And we, of course, make very strong prayers that it will continue to last for a long, long time to come. We pray that it will last till the end of time. And of course, there are reasons for that, because those of us that as ordinary sentient beings, we depend on these teachings to guide us. And it's like the manual for enlightenment, for Buddhahood. And we really rely on this because Buddha himself, as I said, 83 years old, so he showed that aspect of passing away, and so he's no longer here. And of course, mentioning the guru as being an emanation of the Buddha, holding the complete lineage and coming to this world in this time that grows more and more degenerate, to have those gurus to still be able to guide us. So then from that point of view, then we see how precious those gurus, those masters are, isn't it? Masters, male or female, are in this age, to be able to still transmit those teachings. And Buddha, himself, as is generally known, and I think it's quite common knowledge even for beginners, that he gave a total of 84,000 teachings. I guess maybe there's some significance with 84,000, but whatever it is, 84,000 teachings that cover the whole path of sutra and tantra, right? So of course, in some circles, there's some debates about Buddha teaching the tantra or not and all that, but he did. As I said, a few months ago, I was in Nepal for a few months in this place, a small monastery in Swayambhunath, where there's this other important stupa, the big reliquary stupa, similar to the importance of the Bauda stupa, right? And so it's a very holy place. And there, together with thousands of other people, I went to receive the oral transmission of the Gangyur. The Gangyur is the 84,000 teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. And the reason that, the teachings have withstood time is because of this complete transmission of the Gangyur, or almost complete. I mean, over time, there's a little bit of twists and turns in history, but 84,000 teachings, and that have been put into words, actual writing, and there exists a Tibetan version. And how do you spell that? Well, in English, normally I also, together with the common spelling, it's Kangyur, Kangyur, and then the Tengyur, Tengyur, is the commentaries on the Kangyur. So, but I found out, because as I said, I was also trying to learn Tibetan, that in actual Tibetan, it's Ka without the N, Kagyur. Anyway, with a little sidetrack, but if this is interesting to you, then, but when they pronounce it, they don't say Kagyur, they say Kangyur. So when we translate, then it's easier for us as English listeners to say Kangyur. So Kangyur, and that refers to the teachings of Buddha, which are in either a version of 99 volumes, the Tibetan kind of, not scrolls, text, right? The volumes, the stacks of sheets of manuscripts, scripture. And in another tradition, which is maybe more familiar with our Gelugpa tradition, it's apparently 108 volumes. So anyway, why I'm coming into this is that it was really inspiring and a kind of like an eye-opener for me as well when I was listening together with my friend who speaks much better Tibetan, and with a community of many senior monks and then a lot of lay people, that so many of the prayers that we do and that we recite, and even all the various teachings that we've listened to, they're all contained in Buddha's teachings. I mean, it is not like someone made it up along the way, it's all there. So that was really reassuring to me and heartening and encouraging, like, oh, wow, it's all there, like right down to when we do the confession to the 35 Buddhas and we do our prostrations, it's all there, so amazing. So therefore, yeah, 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, and was given over quite a short period of time. If you consider that it seems the Buddha turned the first wheel of the Dharma at about the age of 35 or 36, even though he had shown being enlightened a few years before that. But there was a period when he didn't say anything until he was asked to. And then he started to teach at the age about 35. So just calculating that it's, within a period of less than 50 years in which all these teachings came forth, right up to the time that he showed the aspect of parinirvana, of passing away. So yeah, so then, as I said, that we're taking the Buddha as the primary model for how to live an extraordinary life. I mean, that was the main point that I'm trying to make here, is that we think like, oh, life sometimes feel like, what's the point? What's the point? And then, if you go out and look everywhere, and then if you come across the Buddha Dharma, and then you examine who the Buddha was, then this is what he was, right? And that what he taught, is just not for the happiness of, yeah, definitely it will bring about very positive karma that will improve the quality and the happiness, of the present life. But then, we're not just looking at that, we're looking at the next rebirth, helping one to how do you say, to not go to the lower realms, and not just even to stay in higher rebirths, but to be liberated from samsara altogether. So this is really something very amazing. And therefore, when we are looking for who to follow, if we're thinking of options for making life different from what it is and transforming it, then this is the Buddha. Okay, so that was something to start with, and definitely, if we listen to or read about the life story of Buddha and all the, not only just the present life that he had, but the Buddha actually could have attained enlightenment earlier, but due to his, exceptional level of compassion, he stayed for 3 countless great eons. Yeah, I remember back when I was learning some of this, is that there's a distinction between an eon and a great eon and a countless great eon. And so it's obviously greater than a great eon. It's a huge, unfathomable number of years, right? Kind of like going through the whole development of the universe as we know it, if you like. So that compassion enabled him to stay as a sentient being for 3 countless great eons. And that final lifetime that 2,600 years ago is when he took that rebirth to give the final kind of teaching, and then from which he has passed into parinirvana. So anyway, that's kind of the background, which you can also read more about. And so, it's extremely inspiring. And therefore, if we check it up and do research, and we find that it's something that stands up to our analysis, then maybe it's worthwhile trying this out, right? So the main thing is, the assumptions that we are born with, that were kind of very strongly ingrained in us as sentient beings. These very assumptions are what Buddha overturned through his teachings. And so we're going to go into some of this right now. And then what we get to today is to talk about renunciation. Hi, puppy. To get into the idea of renunciation. So we're following the stages of the path. So if, we think that, oh, bodhicitta, when's bodhicitta coming? So we need to go through it step by step and be a little bit patient, because we need to develop a good basis in our understanding in order to avoid kind of errors in our thinking later on when we get to those other topics. So having the foundational ideas are very key. And even for advanced teachers and practitioners, time and time again, they go back to basic Lam Rim. They talk about precious human rebirth, and they talk about the certainty that we're all going to die and how things are impermanent. So it just goes back and back again to the beginning teachings. So that's why it's important. So we're going to look at 4 misconceptions. In some of the FPMT kind of literature, sometimes it's translated as the 4 erroneous conceptions. Erroneous kind of makes it quite a kind of a complicated word for some people. So maybe misconceptions might be good enough, right? The 4 misconceptions. And so what are these 4 misconceptions? Firstly, regarding or seeing the impure to be pure, or the unclean to be clean. So let's start with impure to be pure. So in our vision and our reality, right, things that are maybe not what it seems, we think is something very perfect, very pristine, like like our own body, for example. Like some people have this your daily regime. You take a shower in the morning, and you come out of the shower, and you kind of feel kind of refreshed and awake to start your day, and you feel, maybe you spray a little deodorant or cologne or whatever, and then you feel like, oh, I'm good to go, right? And then we put on clean clothes and all that. We want to be clean, right, physically, and you don't want to smell, and then the person next to you, like, it goes ew or whatever, right? So that's kind of one of our assumptions. And then at the end of the day, if you come back from like being where you've been, collecting dirt outside, then of course you take another shower. And then we say we're clean. But then, I've mentioned Shantideva, and then you've probably heard of Shantideva. And in engaging in the Bodhisattva deeds, he has this very long chapter on examining how, like if you have, just with regard to ourselves, but also when we develop attachment for another human being, like your spouse, your partner, whatever it is. And one is very drawn to that particular person, right? Because the way they look, the way they smell. So Shantideva, who was trying to cut away attachment, and examining things very in very cold, clear light kind of thing. And like, oh, underneath the skin, what do you have? We have flesh and bones, and we have our filth, we have our guts, and things that we eat and goes into the stomach and all the rest of it. And we can just imagine it. And even like, no matter how clean we are, let's say we happen to have a little burn or a little cut or something, and then blood oozes out, and we go like, ew. And then we're trying to patch up our cuts and wounds, and right. So so beneath our own surfaces, as Shantideva kind of very explicitly describes, that we're just held together by these skeletons, and underneath that is all this filth, and then it doesn't smell so good, right? So therefore, however, we don't see it that way. We just continue to regard that whatever is whatever we are, it's pure, it's clean, and etc. And you can even just think of like, yeah, sometimes I think maybe due to the recent years of living through the lockdowns and everything, and of course there was so much information that went around the world, but how we have to sanitize and all this kind of thing. And so, like, maybe in the past you never thought about it before, and then suddenly it's like, oh, hang on, even on a normal day-to-day basis, you wipe your kitchen surfaces and all that, right? Because there's other things living there, and then you start to realize that, it's not what it looks like a white surface or a clean shining surface is not what it seems. So yeah, in that sense, this is one way of explaining how we regard the impure to be pure and the unclean to be clean. And then the second misconception is that we see suffering to be pleasure. We see what is actually suffering to be happiness. And this is an important one to recognize, because obviously, in daily life, we're looking out for things that will bring some moments of pleasure, from from the things that we wear, to the air that we breathe, and to the food that we eat, and so on, and to the people that we're with, and so on and so forth, right? And we say this is happiness, right? For example, winning the lottery is wonderful, right? Winning the lottery means you get a lot of money, a windfall, and then, your bank account, benefits from that, your life benefits from that, and all those kind of things. But then eventually, one sees that it's not so straightforward. Maybe you have to spend more energy or resources to protect that big windfall that you got, right? A lot of worry about whether you're going to lose the money, and someone's going to come in and scam you or whatever it is. So then initially, what was or it could lead to arguments as well, right? Sometimes we hear about people fighting over inheritance and those kind of things. So initially, what seems to be really wonderful and like the best thing in life turns out to be something that maybe is not so great after all. And like maybe some people will think after a while, like, oh, I wish I didn't win that or whatever. I mean, in life there's all possibilities. So yeah, seeing the suffering, what is suffering to be happiness, and I'll get into that a little more in a while. The third one is seeing what is impermanent as permanent. So you see we're developing through the different layers of this. And yeah, for sure, when we go about life, it's very hard to have this thinking, this mindfulness of things not lasting and things being, even oneself being impermanent. To think that, oh, um, I'm going to be dead, at some point. We usually don't put that foremost in our minds, right? Or just the fact that whatever kind of things that happen in the world, also we expect that it's going to last forever. Like right now, of course, in the present world, there are a lot of difficulties, huge difficulties for sure. And maybe there's this kind of thinking there that it's there, it's permanent, and we're kind of fixated with the fact that it's permanent and it's not going to go away. But everything in samsara is impermanent. And so eventually, even very huge problems will exhaust the karma to be there, and the same goes for the opposite. Anything that's really pleasurable or desirable, it also doesn't last, right? um, just I think very relevant to contemporary life is when people have their weddings or whatever, and find a life partner. But in some cases, the couple really, they have very strong karma with each other to be happy together, and some don't, right? And within a short while, then like if you read about in the news, people who are famous and all that, then it doesn't last, right? Even though you look at the couple and they're very attractive or whatever it is, but their happiness doesn't last, isn't it? So that's number 3. And then the fourth misconception is to see the selfless as having a self. And of course, this goes into the study of emptiness, which is very, very significant and almost quite a unique aspect of Buddhist teachings, right? That seeing that what really lacks, having this truly existent kind of self, this being truly there, being inherently there, we see it as being right there, having a self, starting with the I, starting with what's mine, seeing that as just very solid right there, something that's there that, you reach out, you can touch it, and it's just really substantial. But in reality, whether it is that substantial or not is something to be analyzed. So those are the four misconceptions, and maybe if you've heard that before, then that's a review. And if not, then it is a very important basis for the teachings on the Four Noble Truths, because the Four Noble Truths, which is you could say it's the basis of the Buddha's teachings, the Four Noble Truths, are the antidotes or the counterpoints to the four misconceptions. And by being able to understand what the Four Noble Truths are, then obviously even more to actualize the Four Noble Truths is the way to stop all suffering. And so let's go into that a little bit, not too heavy, not too deep at the moment, because we have the rest of that that verse that we want to get into in the text, but it's all related. So the Four Noble Truths, what are they? The truth of suffering, or what they like to say sometimes, true suffering, true origin, true cessation, and true paths. Sometimes with the S, true sufferings, true origins, true cessations, and true paths, or just the truth of suffering, and so on. So why is it a truth? It is a truth because it is true for in the mind of an Arya being, of one who has realized the truths. It is a truth, and therefore for this reason they are called truths. An Arya, is someone, in English sometimes it's translated as a superior being. An Arya superior, a superior meaning superior in realizing the truth of the self, in realizing how reality actually is. So for that reason, it's a mental continuum, a mind that is superior. That's what it means, okay? So yeah, the Four Noble Truths, and then versus the four erroneous or misconceptions, right? And having just kind of reviewed what those misconceptions are, it's quite easy to see that as sentient beings, we're strongly habituated, right? It's really a very strong, deeply rooted habit that we have, and that governs our reality, that basically, that's the way we operate, right? And it has to do with, well, basically it comes from ignorance. And then that, due to that ignorance, it kind of operates the way we live, our attachment, our clinging, our clinging to this life, to this life's happiness. And due to that clinging, obviously, I have to bring in the discussion about karma, right? Karma simply means action. It's translated into action, and it results in actions that are favorable or, positive, meaning that it brings about an increase in pleasure, and non-virtuous or negative actions, negative karma, which brings about an increase in suffering. So it's either, going up on this scale or going up on the other scale, or both are equally piled up. And then that's kind of how we bumble through one life after the other. And there's this quotation actually from, there's all these Lamrim that was composed by Lama Tsongkhapa, and you've probably heard of the three principles of the path, the three principal aspects of the path. Yeah. It's used quite a lot in our teachings. And in one of the lines, it says that by craving for cyclic existence, embodied beings are continuously bound. And it's indeed this, it's by just being so attached to the happiness of this life, not seeing the reality of it, that embodied beings, meaning sentient beings, are continuously bound to continuous rebirth, one life after the next, sometimes up and sometimes down, right? And it's uncertain, where it really ends up, because there is a kind of explanation of how the different steps, in which samsara goes around. And, you've heard of the 12 links of dependent origination, 12 links of dependent arising, which explain how, we accumulate karma and how it projects, one life after the other. And even the way it projects another life is not so straightforward. So maybe another time there could be more discussion on that. But so basically, karma is continuously accumulating, and the results of what is done, say in this life, are not necessarily going to ripen in your next rebirth. It could ripen much, much, much further down the road. And even some of the things that we experience within this life, whether it's the good stuff or the lousy stuff, we can't really say where it came from. We can't say that definitely, oh, it came from my past life, right? But which past life? It could be from way, way back, way, way, way back. And then just due to meeting with those particular conditions, that it takes root and it comes out, like maybe in this life, So we never know. And so there's that kind of uncertainty. And so, like, if someone is thinking like, all right, this is pretty interesting, let's get more into it, and please, you want to find out more about this, then it's something really to think about, right? How karma really works, because you'll definitely experience the effects of something that you created, right? That's very basic understanding of cause and effect. Just excuse me one second. I'm one of those people that because here it's what is it? It's 9:45 in the morning. I'm one of those people where the voice just like is not that great somehow, and it takes time to warm up. So excuse the hoarseness. I'm fine. Okay. So in this life, when we kind of recognize that it's important, we wake up to the fact that maybe we don't want to have so many problems. Maybe we want to transform our life a little bit. And then starting at the beginning, then, as I did mention briefly the last time, then we want to abandon non-virtuous actions and cultivate virtuous actions. So what Buddha taught is just there's 10. It's very easy, for our memory, right? 10 virtuous actions, and then on the opposite side, there are 10 non-virtuous actions, and they relate to body, speech, and mind, right? The first three are mainly, physical, and then 4 to do with speech, and then the last 3 to do with our mental karma. And so just by even adopting these habits, these practices within this lifetime, we can see within a short time that there is immediate benefit from it, right? Just by, for example, the first one, which is very important, to not kill, to avoid and to abandon killing as much as possible, and to be really careful and mindful about that. And obviously the benefit of not killing is to not suffer harm so easily, and never mind talking about the effects in future lives and so on, right? To not be harmed physically doesn't mean just someone coming up and attacking you. It also means like not being heavy diseases, and sometimes then people say, oh, but I've done so many things, and then yet they have cancer or whatever, very heavy life-threatening diseases. But as I said just now, that the workings of karma are quite subtle, and so then if you experience the results of karma from many, many lifetimes ago, then that's where it could come from. But then if one has this intention to practice in a virtuous manner, then it could purify the result of going to suffering lower rebirth, or more suffering future rebirth. So it's hard to say. So yeah, I'm talking a lot about things that are to do with suffering. So maybe here is a good time to bring in more about the discussion on suffering. So going back to the Four Noble Truths, right? The truth of suffering, that, yeah, everything is basically in the nature of suffering. In the Pali, and I guess in the Sanskrit, they say it's dukkha. I am not in any way dukkha. And or in Tibetan, dungel. And then some translators say that suffering is not really the right word, that a more suitable word would be dissatisfaction or an unsatisfaction. And maybe unsatisfaction, or dissatisfaction, is just not being in a place of calm or harmony or balance, right? Just kind of an undesirable place to be. And here, Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to, maybe that was the only pop song he knew of, I'm not sure, but he loved to bring up the Rolling Stones, that the famous I can't get no satisfaction. I think that was the only top hit he knew, maybe, and he would just quote that and he would have a good laugh. And I said, like, what's the name of that singer? What's the name of that singer? I can't get no satisfaction. Of course, we thought that was very funny. Yeah, we can't get any satisfaction, right? That's kind of how, the state of things. And then the truth of origin, is that recognizing that everything is in the nature of suffering, then where does it come from? And it's rooted in karma, which I already mentioned. But more than karma, is comes from our afflictions. Maybe I'll talk about afflictions in a while. But anyway, then true cessations is realizing that there is a way to get out of it, which is what the Buddha taught and realized, right? And had displayed, sitting under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya and showing the deed of attaining enlightenment. I keep saying showing the deed because the Buddha, that's what's accepted in the Hinayana, the Pali tradition. His Holiness now mainly calls it the Pali and the Sanskrit tradition, so as not to make one sound like it's lesser than the other, to make it like you respect both the Pali tradition for the Theravada and then the Sanskrit tradition, which is more for the Mahayana. So true cessation, meaning that if one realizes the way to cut the root of this suffering, then one is totally liberated from cyclic existence, which is what samsara means, cyclic existence, from continuous, this kind of uncontrolled rebirth, going here, going there, not knowing what you're doing. And then the one who has attained that true cessation, that realization of reality, is one who has achieved the true paths and therefore is liberated or has achieved enlightenment. So that's that part of it. But going back to suffering, then there are many categories of suffering. Sometimes there's also a little joke about the Lamrim teachings, that it's all about suffering, like as if you come in as an introductory course and then all you hear about for the first couple of days is like, it's all suffering, everything is suffering, and some people get really turned off. And there's also this other story that Rinpoche liked to tell about when the November course, or when he taught somewhere, I'm not sure whether it's which country, Australia or somewhere, but that he had been just going into details about suffering. And then after the first class or something, like a lot of people had disappeared because it was just too much for them. And I guess it didn't really appeal to them to just hear all about suffering. And then so he had to work in some other topics. But yeah, if you prefer the word dissatisfaction or unsatisfaction, then maybe that might work better for you. But just a dissatisfied state, right? A dissatisfied kind of a state. So there are many categories for suffering. And sometimes, you can have divisions of 6 or 8 or whatever, but we'll start with 3. And these are the suffering of change, and the suffering of, or what is called pervasive compounding suffering, or pervasive compounded suffering. So the first one, the suffering of suffering, because we've already been talking about that a lot, but if you just basically take the whole process of our lives, or not just as a human, but even if you look at animals, right? Birth, aging, sickness, and death. And from the moment one is born, then whatever period of time one has, eventually, due to whatever reasons, then that's the end of that rebirth, that birth. So it's quite easy to understand this part, right? The suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and it's all suffering, right? It's all in a kind of a state where things are quite limited in that sense, isn't it? And then there's the suffering of change, and as I kind of mentioned a few examples already of like things can start off at a very high, happy state, And then from there, it can just really go downhill all the way, or it will have ups and downs. And just a very simple example, like maybe for you in North America, it's kind of still quite pleasant weather, right? Spring or not yet summer kind of weather. Here in Singapore, it's as I said, very close to the equator, so it's about the same, except maybe nowadays we have more rain. Yeah, everywhere in the world we seem to have a lot more rain, but it gets very humid here, and I mean, just in terms of preserving a quiet environment for our Zoom, I have my air conditioning on. Actually, there was construction outside, but today I don't know what they're doing. So anyway, uh, if not, then it's very easy to just perspire and be uncomfortable. So yeah, I mean, like taking AC as a good example. Like first, when you turn it on, it's like, oh, wonderful, the cool air. And then after an hour, if it's set too low, and then you start shivering and looking for a jacket, and then it becomes something really uncomfortable. So it's a very simple example of how something that is pleasurable quickly turns into something very unpleasant. And so that's a quick example of suffering of change. But the third one is the most important, the pervasive compounding suffering, which is the big picture, right? Which is what we've been covering, that throughout beginningless lives, then there is this presence of being born over and over again, and sometimes a high rebirth, sometimes a low rebirth, and all those, everything in between, or just sometimes being born, even in a human rebirth, being born. I mean, they like to give these examples in the literature of the scriptures of like wheel turning kings, like just very high. Wheel turning king is more in the sense of being like a spiritual master, but you can go from someone who is very powerful to someone who is just bullied by everyone, and so there are all those permutations in between, isn't it? So therefore the thing that the Buddha taught to overcome mainly is the pervasive compounding suffering. So maybe at this point, shall we have a look? Oh, gosh, time goes by. Shall we look at the text that were um, the points of the Lumbrim, and if we can pull that up? Yeah, so let's go to the page before this. The page 6, isn't it? There, that's the last verse. Yep. So we had, well, I can read what's on the screen there, right? If we just scroll up a little teeny bit. No, the other way. Okay. There. So we had looked at this verse, most of it, right? Please bless me to see that this greatly meaningful body with freedoms and richnesses or leisures and endowments is difficult to find and easily perishes, that action and result are so profound. And so we've been talking a little bit about the workings of karma, right? Cause and effect, action and result are so profound. And like the workings of subtle karma are really hard to understand sometimes, and that the sufferings of the evil gone transmigratory beings are so difficult to bear. And also we talked a bit about different rebirths, going high or low. Just in that regard, there are the 6 realms, and we are in the human realm. So what we regard as, excuse me, as lower would be being born as an animal, and then being born as a hungry ghost, a preta, preta being, and then as a hell being. And then hell is kind of complicated because there are many levels of hells, and the hot hells being the ones with the most immense suffering. And then there are the intermediate hells, where sometimes it seems to be um, a little better, but then it gets worse. And so it's completely unpredictable. And then we talk about better or, higher rebirths. Then one can take rebirth in the God realms or the demigod realms. But even there, like, especially if you look at liberation in the palm of your hand, there's very detailed explanations of how even among the gods, they fight with each other. And, when they discover that they're going to die, and then nobody wants to go near them because, all their pleasant aspects kind of disappear, and they become really unbearable to be near and things like that. So up and down, there is that sense of the pervasive compounding suffering. And of course, never mind looking at animals, like cattle being taken to an abattoir, and out there in the safaris and in the jungles, how predators constantly hunting and looking for the weaker prey and so on, right? So therefore, please bless me to take refuge from the depths of my heart in the 3 rare sublime ones, or the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, abandon negative karma and accomplish virtue according to Dharma. And therefore, that is kind of the motivation why one would seek the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as the objects of refuge. And when we say objects of refuge, it's not idol worship, like there's a solid statue there and that statue is giving you happiness. It's not like that at all. It's regarding, who the Buddha was, what his deeds were, the Dharma, as I mentioned about the teachings and what we're going through right now, is covering the essence of it. And then the Sangha being those noble Aryas, the Arya beings, which I also mentioned, as being that community that support the perpetuation and the transmission of the teachings of Buddha. So you can understand it something in that way, on a just to make it simple. And that by relying on the Buddha and his teachings, and cultivating virtue and abandoning non-virtue, then even within this very lifetime, we can find more peace, more calm, more balance, and more happiness. So that is renunciation according to the path of the small scope. I'll talk more about this term renunciation in a minute. Let's just go through this next verse then. Independence upon that, even if I achieve the mere higher rebirth of a deva is like a god being, or a demigod being, or a human, I will still have to experience suffering endlessly in samsara because of not having abandoned and being under the control of the disturbing thought obscurations. So this sentence is something I'll cover in more detail. Therefore, please bless me to reflect well upon the way of circling in samsara and to continuously follow day and night the path of the three types of precious trainings, the principal method for becoming free from samsara. And so this verse captures the essence of the graduated path of the middle capable being. That's how Rinpoche translated it, or the person of the middle scope or medium scope. Basically, the one that has generated definite renunciation of samsara. So has someone who has that conviction that it is not worthwhile to keep going round and round, and it is better to seek the way out of it. Okay, so going back to that sentence, because of not having abandoned and being under the control of the disturbing thought obscurations. All right, we can stop the text sharing for the time being. So we've already kind of discussed, or the point of whether it's worthwhile to just aspire for the happiness of future rebirths alone, because even those that attain higher rebirths, and I mentioned last time about how like one of the freedoms, that one of the things that we're free from, our 8 freedoms as a human being, is not being born as a long life God. And that because if we look at a long life God as being a being who is able to stay in long periods of single pointed concentration, with just a single pointed focus and without wavering from that, and they can maintain that level of concentration for not just hours, but for days, for months, and for like long periods of time. But that's just that single-minded concentration, single-pointed concentration. It is not the antidote to samsara. And also on that same kind of talking about a higher rebirth, it's in that liberation in the palm of your hand, where Pabongka Rinpoche describes quite in detail about when those beings take rebirth as gods, and then they have really pleasurable existences where their possessions and their enjoyments far surpass what we imagine on this planet. But then at some point, those pleasures run out, and then they also come to death. And then for the long life God, it's always in that single pointed concentration. So whichever the case, they haven't left samsara. And also, if you're having a good time all the time, it's not going to be so something that would be urgent that you would want to get out of samsara, like, oh, let's put it off. It's really nice here. I want to stay here for a long time. So there's that lack of disenchantment with cyclic existence. A lack of that dissatisfaction, because you just say, I want to stay here, but it doesn't mean that you're finished with samsara. So therefore, all sentient beings have not abandoned and are under the control of the disturbing thought obscurations, which is how Rinpoche must have translated it. But those disturbing thought obscurations are our karma and afflictions. And the afflictions are the ones that are we really need to fight against, to conquer. You know, when they have all these, like even just now, I think when we read the praise of Shakyamuni Buddha, we always have these terms for the Buddha, like the conqueror, you know, the destroyer. You know, these are terms that from tradition, you know, are used to describe the Buddha. So conqueror and destroyer doesn't mean a physical enemy, right? Or a physical territory or something. It's the destroyer of ignorance and all the other afflictions. It is the conqueror who overcomes and subdues all the afflictions and you know, is free from the afflictions. And the afflictions are where our karma is continually generated from. And the root of these is ignorance. And that's the main one that we'll talk about here. Yeah. And this ignorance causes us to be reborn again and again. And that ignorance is related to not understanding how things exist, you know, the nature of reality. There's a very technical phrase to explain what this ignorance actually is. And I'll just introduce it here, and you might know it. And for now, just take it as its good imprint. The view of the transitory collection is the root of ignorance. The view, which is basically from the mind of the transitory collection. Okay, we'll leave that. But anyway, so if we go down to, you know, examining it in detail, then that's where it comes from. But that's where the afflictions, you know, of attachment, of hatred, all arise from, and all the other, you know, there's the secondary, the root afflictions, the secondary afflictions, and you know, from there it causes us to create various kinds of karma. Now, then, for someone who is in the medium scope and thinks that they really want to be free from cyclic existence and they're going to find a way out, then they have basically found renunciation, right? To renounce. And in general, I think renunciation means giving up, right? To give up something. And renunciation doesn't mean going out and asking for someone to cut off your hair, and or even yourself to put on different clothes and stay at home, or, you know, in a cave or whatever it is. I did kind of go through that last week, but actual renunciation is to give up the workings of samsara, to give up attachment to the happiness of this life and future lives, is to want to seek liberation from samsara, and it is to want to cut the root of samsara, to cut the root of cyclic existence. And that is what it really is. And in order to do that, and if one feels that, you know, Buddha is someone that one wants to take refuge in, then one follows the teaching of the Four Noble Truths and figures a way out to actualize, to realize the Four Noble Truths. And so I'm going to come to an interesting part that, you know, is relevant and practical for us right now. Because then, you know, you might think, oh, renunciation, and then you're going to run out and get new robes and cut off your hair, and if you're not ready to do that, don't. So Rinpoche used to say that renunciation doesn't mean giving up the enjoyments, of this life. It doesn't mean giving up all your possessions and stop enjoying your life. It's not about that at all. So you can kind of, take a sigh of relief and like, okay, this is okay. We can manage, right? Uh, it's not sort of like giving away everything you own, selling away your car, or, and stop wearing shoes, or, yeah, moving to India or Nepal or something like that. It doesn't mean that at all. In fact, you could see, I mean, if you've looked at videos or pictures of Lama Zopa Rinpoche in his various retreat houses in Kopan. I mean, there are a lot of things in those rooms, but those are very precious things. There's like countless different kinds of images, first of all, and holy objects, statues of all sizes, and pictures of Buddhas and deities, and it's really quite a gallery, and these are for specific purposes. It's not that Rinpoche didn't like seeing a blank wall. It's to constantly see that all these images are reminders of the Buddha, and that they're objects of offering. And then there's water bowls everywhere, there's countless lights and flowers, and just all kinds of different ways of making offerings. So there's lots of stuff. So you can't say that, oh, Rinpoche didn't have renunciation, it's just renunciation of what? I mean, I think he would not hesitate if someone needed those things to give them up. And the fact that he just kind of decided 2 years ago to depart from this life when he could have stayed. I mean, there was no clinging to this life at all. I mean, and even for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, people are constantly offering long life pujas, especially this year. His Holiness is turning 90 in a few months, and the whole like Tibetan community, many Buddhist communities there. And then when they have these long life processions, I mean, there's physical things, right? There's, piles of all the texts, and then there's statues, long life statues. And it's not that His Holiness keeps them in his room or something. They have a storehouse, storeroom, big storeroom, where all these things are kept, and then at appropriate times, I think they're gifted away to others, and His Holiness himself used to say that I have only, my possessions are my Vajra and bell, because I mean, in terms of the Vajrayana practice, then these are just what you need in order to kind of accomplish certain high practices. And so that's what he says. He doesn't say that, oh, I've got all these rooms and rooms of statues that people have given me, and even all the money, the funds that go to the Dalai Lama Trust Fund, he is using that all for helping others, for the Tibetan people and other communities, and causes in need, and so on and so forth. So and yeah, even Shakyamuni Buddha kind of showed that this wasn't really the way to go. one of his deeds before, achieving enlightenment was that he followed some, obviously, it's kind of funny because Buddhist and non-Buddhist, obviously Buddha was Buddha, and the term Buddhist probably didn't exist, but those that kind of were more the traditional practitioners of the time, right? Mainly following the historical Hindu teachings. So anyway, there was this practice of being ascetic and giving up everything and just going into the forest with barely any clothing and just meditating. And so there's this image of the Buddha reduced down to just skin, and you can see the skeleton because he was so thin and undergoing these ascetic practices for a few years, and then realizing that that wasn't the way to get out of suffering, as well. That wasn't the solution. So yeah, even Buddha showed that, it doesn't mean that you give up everything and you will become enlightened. So then for one who decides that, okay, they're seriously looking at this path of the medium scope and seeking renunciation, then the main practice for this path is actually it's the main practice of the Pali tradition, right? Seeking liberation and following such teachings. And the three higher trainings, or the three precious trainings that the text mentioned, are those of number one, morality or ethical discipline, ethics. Number two, meditative concentration, or sometimes just concentration. And the third is wisdom. And then you have to go through them kind of sequentially, right? Starting first with adopting the training of morality, which is to live, in an ethical way, giving up non-virtuous ways of life, and such as cultivating the 10 virtues, right? But the main thing here is, what's the point of giving up non-virtue? Sometimes, I don't know, the question could ask like, so what, But, if you give up a non-virtuous kind of way of life and adopt virtuous virtue, then the mind becomes a more like if you want to plant a crop, right? You want the best conditions, isn't it, for your harvest and all that kind of thing. So in the same way, you want the most favorable conditions. And just on that level, of discussion alone, never mind talking about karma, that by adopting a virtuous virtue, then the mind becomes more peaceful and less distracted and less disrupted. And there's less harm coming to you, there's less of your own harm going outside. And it becomes a more conducive place to develop meditative concentration, which is a mind of calm abiding. If you're going to have that kind of special concentration that can focus for a long period of time without wavering on an object of focus, then you want to have the best conditions, right? Like if you want your little candle to burn nicely, you don't want a breeze coming from somewhere, right? You want to keep that flame as kind of undisturbed as possible. So if you kind of have to have obstacles due to one's distractions and engaging in kind of non-virtuous practices, then that's going to harm your own generation of karma abiding. So as I said, never mind about karma, because obviously there is karma related, and it brings a lot of obstacles, it brings suffering, and it's just not a good place to start. So if I can just kind of put it in that way that is something that our contemporary minds can kind of take, yeah. And then with the mind of calm abiding, then one can easily cultivate wisdom, can easily have that space to be practiced mindfully and to generate a very kind of developed mind that can focus on how things exist, on emptiness, on selflessness, and then thereby being able to destroy the root of samsara, which is ignorance. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of the way it works. And that's why people find it very important to develop that kind of mind that is able to focus single pointedly, like in a mind of calm abiding, and if we even talk about the physical environment, then one is supposed to find a quiet place, and be in solitude. So basically, it's going away from where there's distraction, isn't it, to our own mind. And that in itself is an already very extraordinary to want to have that interest to practice in this way. When we consider the among human beings, 6 or more counting billion human beings in our world, where generally people are busy with a whole lot of other things. Some are just focused entirely on conflict, and some are focused on, uh, totally on attachment and everything in between. So just to want to choose a path where you move away from that is already very remarkable, I would say. And to just kind of end off today, for you to take that away to think about, even just this path to liberation based on the Buddhist teachings of the Four Noble Truths, and then seeing what renunciation means to you, being less attached to one's samsaric environment, samsaric mind, and all that. We should keep in mind that it doesn't mean we don't enjoy life, and that because we're not trying to create more suffering, we're trying to get away from suffering. And so, like if you have ice cream, I think we all like ice cream, especially on a hot day. Uh, you know, we can still enjoy our ice cream, just not too much, because too much might make you sick, and maybe too many calories or whatever. But we can enjoy our ice cream, but we enjoy our ice cream with an attitude of renunciation, with an attitude of seeing what that ice cream is just something pleasurable that it lasts a while, and you'll need, sooner or later you'll need more ice cream, and that it is food, right? I mean, I'm using ice cream as a nice kind of yummy example, but it's food. And something that Rinpoche emphasized on, which comes from Buddhist teachings, is that each kind of object can be turned into a practice of Dharma. And therefore, when we have our ice cream or a nice coffee or cake or whatever it is, then, without even talking yet about bodhicitta, then we can generate that offering in that food into offering to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha that we have taken refuge in. And then, that transforms just even the way we eat. We can make prayers before we eat our ice cream. That's why there's, usually, I mean, we teach generally, like you say, Oma Home, but I mean, Oma Home is transforming it according it to Tantra, actually, isn't it? But just on the level of a beginning, offering your food to remembering, the kindness of the Buddha and your teachers, and then the the wonder of the Dharma, and so on and so forth. And then you think that by offering this food, may I achieve the food of concentration. So there's actually, I'm just using today one example, but there's actually a significance about offering flowers and incense and lights and all that. So with regard to food and drink, it is taught that, by this offering, may I achieve the food of concentration, which is that meditative focus that we had just discussed. And so then that makes, eating a little different already, that with it, you have this virtuous aspiration, and that you're also offering it to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And then that definitely makes your ice cream extraordinary. It's no longer an ordinary scoop of ice cream. And I'd just like to close with this, that actually these come from different commentators, the scholars. So in Nagarjuna, who was one of the great philosophers, on teaching of emptiness, that he has this verse from a letter to a friend: with an understanding that food is like medicine, rely upon it without attachment or hatred, not for the sake of vanity, not for the sake of grandeur, not for the sake of becoming stout or fat, I don't know, stout. Eat solely for the sake of sustaining your body. And it's something that as a monastic, we're encouraged to also make this prayer when we, especially like for many who live in communities, then you're receiving food that's offered by your sponsors. Then you think that you offer this food, and that the food is with this mindfulness that it is for sustaining your body, so that you can be of service, and that you can be free of this kind of attachment to food. So that's something that you might think about if this is something new to you. And therefore, it can be virtuous ice cream, virtuous cookies and candy, and so on. And so as long as we don't kind of overindulge, right? And yeah, so then we transform. We can start off with transforming the way we eat. Maybe for you in your side of the world, you can transform your breakfast tomorrow. Okay, I think we'll stop here, and we'll continue. Yeah, thanks for mentioning about the YouTube. Okay. Okay, we'll close with our dedications. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly again attain the state of a good. Oh, that's a spelling mistake. May I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. And the long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Thank you, everyone, and hope you have a great week ahead. And next week, which is the final for this short course, we'll talk about generating bodhicitta. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.